Hey guys, it's Katie. Welcome back to my channel. I am so glad that you're here. If you watched my last video, you will definitely know that I am absolutely obsessed with these mini mics and I will be using them in like every single video that I get the chance to use them in. I just feel like it's so fun. It makes me feel like I'm just like so cool. Like I'm like a reporter or something. I don't really know. So prepare to be sick of me in these mini mics. If you've been keeping up with me and my channel, you will know that I normally post like a wrap-up video every single month of all the books that I've read. And you will also know that last month, for the month of September, I actually didn't post a wrap-up because I was very busy. I actually got married in the month of October, so it's been a very busy past few months. And because of that, I would just figure that I would combine my September reading wrap-up and my October reading wrap-up together. So that is what we're going to be talking about in today's video. It's just going to be fun, chill. I've never filmed in this spot in my apartment. This is our closet. We just have like a cute little corner right here and the lighting's like so perfect. And I just get to sit in my comfy little reading chair. Like I'm just so chill right now and I love it. I do have quite a few books to talk about, so maybe grab a snack, a beverage, a bev, and we're going to just get into it. Let's go ahead and start out with September. I actually did prepare my stats for you guys, which is very rare if you continuously watch my reading wrap-ups. Shocker that I'm actually doing my job for once. Love that for me. In the month of September, I read 7 books total, 2 romances, 2 literary fiction, 1 fantasy, 1 classic, 1 sci-fi, and actually one of them was a reread, which I absolutely ate up and I cannot wait to talk about. I read 2,549 pages total, and then my average rating will be on the screen right here for you as well. Okay, those are the stats. Now let's go ahead and get on into the books. The first book that I read in the month of September was Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. Now, this one was a pretty big read for me. I feel like I've been putting this one off just because so many people either absolutely love it or they absolutely just like can't stand it, don't like it, whatever. So I was really nervous to see what camp that I would be in. And in all honesty, I was kind of in the middle. Genre-wise, I gave this literary fiction and not romance because honestly, if you go into this thinking that it's a romance, you're like in for it. I don't think you will enjoy this if you go into it thinking it's romance. It's basically in high society London, and we're following our 2 main characters, BJ and Magnolia. They have been on again, off again for years. Like think like Toxicity, like Gossip Girl. It's kind of like that, but set in London. And there's just like so much drama. Like it honestly kind of felt like reality TV show. And there's always on again, off again. There's always so many things going on, and there's always so many like scandals that are going on as well. Like they're in the tabloids, they're all over the place. Like when I think about like a messy book, I think of this one. Like this is messy. It's also very character-based, so there's not really a lot of plot going on, in all honesty, either. And with my reading with this, I've been honestly feeling quite conflicted with it because there were a lot of things that I enjoyed, some things that I didn't, and some things were kind of hard for me because most of the time I don't love a character-based book unless I like absolutely love and adore the characters. Otherwise, obviously, I would absolutely eat up a character-based book about them. But going into a book like this where I didn't really know the characters yet or anything like that, especially with such a different dynamic than I'm used to, I just didn't really eat this up as much as I thought I was going to. I have heard, though, that if you don't love the first Magnolia Parks, to keep going because Magnolia Parks of it all just ends up getting better. And I do have to say, the ending was quite good and not really what I was expecting at all. But also because a lot of people say that they like Daisy Hates, which is kind of like a second series within the series. Like they're interconnected and they're like in the same world, but she has her own series, Daisy Hates does, and then Magnolia Parks has her own series. But a lot of people like Daisy Hates books more than they like the Magnolia Parks books. Like you're normally either a Daisy Hates person or a Magnolia Parks person, just following the different storylines. And they're all in the same universe. They're just following different main characters. So I'm interested to see. I definitely want to continue the series, but I just don't think it was like a favorite for me. I think my standards were also kind of high personally, but I think that I would eat up the rest of the series. I do have to also say that I did finish the majority of this on audio because while I was reading it, I did just get a little bit bored because it was character based. I think I'm gonna rate this like a 3.5. There were definitely things that piqued my interest and characters that I enjoyed more than others, but I do just think that this isn't like my favorite book I've ever read, but I do want to continue the rest of the series. The next book I read was Happily Never After by Lynn Painter. I really love Lynn Painter's books, no matter if they're her YA ones or her new adult ones. To be completely honest, I just think that they're nice, fun, easy palate cleansers most of the time. I do prefer her YA books. I just feel like she is like the queen of YA romance in my personal opinion. Like I feel like she does no wrong in that sense. All of those have been rated quite high for me. But when I come to her new adult romances, they're still great palate cleansers and still very easygoing and fun and light. But at the same time, like I just feel like I don't get enough substance, I feel like a lot of the time. And this one kind of the same for me. I feel like this is my least favorite new adult romance from her. And I'll be completely honest, I don't even remember the characters' names. Love that for me. Looks like I was reading about Sophie and Max. And basically the reason why they meet is because Max is like a professional objector for weddings, and he is hired for Sophie's wedding because there's just like a weird dynamic as to why she wouldn't want to break it off. So he objects to the wedding. They don't end up together. And then all of a sudden, Max and Sophie start objecting at weddings together. And that's basically the majority of the plot. Things do get kind kind of interesting, a little bit sticky sometimes, but I don't know. I rated this a 3-star. Again, it's nothing like crazy revolutionary. I just didn't really like relate to the characters a lot, and I feel like there wasn't really a lot of depth, which I feel like a lot of times I do enjoy a palette cleanser because there's not a lot of depth, so like I don't want to like cry or feel a lot of feelings or anything, because that's like what a palette cleanser is for. But I just don't end up rating them very highly, and I just don't think I'm going to really ever think about that book or the characters again, to be completely honest. Next up, we're going to be talking about the first book that I got to read on my Kindle. I'm so excited. I've had it for 2 months now, and I can say, 1, this is the best gift that I've ever been given. 2, I was thinking about it on and off for a really long time. I was like, do I really want a Kindle? Like, am I going to actually use it? You're going to use it. If you're on the fence, literally, I recommend it so much. I've been loving it and eating it up. But anyways, the first book that I read was the first book in the Kindred's Curse saga, which is called Spark of the Everflame by Penn Cole. And I really enjoyed this one. And this is a new fantasy series that I've been getting recommended so much. I did end up reading this, by the way, in my ultimate book video that I posted in September, if you guys want to check that out. I actually read this on Kindle Unlimited, so it was free, which we love. Well, I do pay for Kindle Unlimited, but it's basically free by the time you pay like $12 a month or whatever it is. I don't know. That's how my brain works anyways. We are following our main character, Diem, in this book, and she is actually a healer. And she lives in this world where there are like different realms going on, and she kind of lives in the slums, and she's a human, but then there are these very powerful people called the Descended who have powers, and they're the royals, and the humans and the Descended don't really mix, and they're just kind of like separate in general. All of a sudden though, something happens with Diem, and she ends up becoming a healer for the palace, as well as getting to know some very important people with power. And then something else kind of happens. There's like a rebel thing going on, and it's very interesting. And I really liked being able to read about a human who was a healer. And I feel like healers are not normally the main character of our stories, especially a fantasy story, because they're seen as like almost like weak, or in general, women are mostly healers. And I feel like a lot of the time that's just not seen as powerful. Being a healer is not powerful, even though it's so powerful. And I'm actually going to be talking about another healing main character that is a girl here in a second, which is too funny. But wow, I really did enjoy this one. I feel like it was a very different story than I'm used to reading, in all honesty, too. I feel like it's very refreshing to read a book and it not get completely spoiled for you. Like whenever I was reading ACOTAR and Throne of Glass, there were so many things that were spoiled for me. That was so frustrating going into it, because I knew so many things, so many things weren't shocking or crazy plot twists or anything. And I think it really changed my experience reading those books, to be completely honest. And with this series and all of the newer fantasy series that I'm getting into too, I know nothing about what's going on because it's not all over social media. And that makes me so excited to get into them. So excited that I don't know the twists and turns or any plot twists. I rated this one, I think I'm between actually like a 4 and a 4.25, honestly. There were some parts where it got like a little slow and stuff, but there was like quite a bit of world building. I think some things were talked about maybe a little bit too much and got like a little bit repetitive, but other than that, I really enjoyed this, and I thought it was a great first read for a fantasy book. And the second one is going to be so good. It left off on such a good note. So many of you guys commented actually on the video where I read the first one that the second one, I think it's called like Glow of the Everflame, is so good, and like sold you on the series, and you like absolutely ate it up and loved it. So I'm really excited to read that one soon. Okay, and then I wanted to read at least like one witchy-esque book. So I ended up picking up The X-Hex by Erin Sterling. I heard a lot about this in recent years while watching a lot of book creators content, and I thought, you know what? Why don't I just listen to it, have fun time with my reading journal? And that is exactly what I ended up doing. This is basically about a girl who dates this guy whenever she's younger, and then they kind of like end things poorly. So her and her cousin end up putting a little hex on him, and nothing happens. But years later down the road, the guy ends up coming back to town, and they realize they actually did in fact put a hex on the guy, and it was very real. This one was fun and spooky. I don't think it was really anything crazy special in my opinion though. I didn't really love it that much. I'll be completely honest. I think I'm learning that I love reading about magic and witches and spells and all of that kind of stuff, but I think I need to read more things that go more into the details of the being a witch and what exactly that means. Like basically like more like Bonnie Bennett witch from the Vampire Diaries, less than like a witchy rom-com moment, even though I would love a romance in a book like that. But I just feel like the rom-com at all, like I'm just wanting to know more about the witchy stuff. And I feel like all the witchy romances I just really haven't enjoyed that much. So I think that's what I need to gravitate towards more. So if you have any like witchy recommendations that are kind of like that, like almost like eerier, like more like the Vampire Diaries-esque, let me know. I know that I'm literally posting this on November 1st and like it's past Halloween, but I simply don't care. I will read a witchy book no matter the time. I think I'm gonna rate this like a 3-star as well. It was just nothing crazy. I didn't really love it. It was also just fun. It was just kind of like there, if you know what I mean. If you're looking for something fun and witchy though, I would definitely recommend it. I just don't think that those kinds of books are really for me. Okay, and then the book that I ended up rereading was Daisy Jones and the Six. If you know anything about me, this is a 5-star book for me. I read this last year, I think, around like the spring, summertime for the first time. So it's been a little over a year since I've read it, and I've watched the show, absolutely love the show, love the soundtrack, so good, and ever since then I've heard so much about the audiobook because there's so many different characters in this book, and it's kind of written like a play almost, and they're getting interviewed and giving their answers, but the way that it's like put together is so just interesting. Like I've truly never read a book like this. It's so unique and I love it so much. But the audiobook, there's a different actor for every single character. It's just so interactive and so interesting, and I really, really loved it, and I'm really glad that I gave the audiobook a chance. It just made me completely fall in love with this story again, with these characters. Daisy Jones and the Six is basically about how a band comes to be, kind of like in the 70s. It's also loosely based off of Fleetwood Mac, some people say, and so many of these characters are so perfectly imperfect and so flawed in such an interesting way. You just can't help to fall in love with them. They're so human, and I think that I will forever love this book. I think this is a forever 5-star. Sometimes whenever I read a book a 5-star, I get nervous that I'm gonna reread it and I'm gonna be like, Katie, was this a 5-star? Like, do you actually have good judgment? And this literally solidified and gave me validation and reassurance that I do, in fact, have great judgment, actually. If you have not read this book yet, highly recommend listening to the audiobook or just reading it physically. It's a great time, no matter what. Also, listen to the soundtrack and watch the show if you haven't yet as well. And this is a 5-star, once again, by the way. And then I ended up reading my very first classic. Now, I guess this isn't the first classic that I've ever read. I will be completely honest with you, though. Do I remember anything about the classics that I was reading in high school? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Anyways, I ended up reading The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. In this book, you're basically following this man that lives next to this other man who is named Jay Gatsby, and he is kind of like a aloof main character almost. Like you really never know everything about him. And I feel like there's so many things going on in the town. Like there's always gossiping about him. Like, who is this man? I heard this, I heard that, which I did enjoy the gossiping, let me just say. And the reason for that is because he throws these big, lavish, extravagant parties, and it's set in the 20s. But this book, I feel like, is a lot more than just about Jay Gatsby and who he was as a person and why he did the things that he did, honestly. I feel like this book, though, touched on so many different things, and I think that's why that people talk about it in classes and stuff. And I do think the story was interesting. I think that if they would have talked about more of, like, the drama with things and, like, the little romance subplot and all of that kind of stuff a little bit more, I would have been a lot more intrigued and interested than I was. And if it would have been written in a different way that it wasn't back in the 20s. But again, this is a classic for a reason. There's a lot of symbolism, all that kind of stuff, and obviously it was a classic for the time it was written. So of course it's not going to be written in the way that we speak today because it was literally written about the 20s, of course. And I totally understand that. I do think, though, because of that, it just wasn't really my favorite book I've ever read. I know that some people absolutely love and adore this. I just don't think maybe now in my life I appreciate this as much. Maybe I'll read this in the future and I'll love it and give it a 5-star. But I think for me right now, I'm going to give it like a 3.5 maybe. I like absolutely ate up the bits that were so drama filled and I thought were so interesting. In some parts I was really intrigued, but there were some other parts where I just didn't really care. Is that bad to say? I'm just gonna be honest. Yeah, I just didn't really care. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was the writing style. It probably was the writing style, to be honest. And I feel like I probably didn't read this at the best time, honestly, for me either, because I kind of was going through a lot mentally with like wedding planning and stuff. So maybe I'll reread this in a few years or something. It's not that long either. It's literally under like 200 pages. And I'll give this a second chance and see what I think then. But as of right now, as a 23-year-old, I didn't really love this very much. I don't know. Please don't slander me in the comments. Okay, now we're going to talk about the final book that I read in the month of September, but the next 3 books that I'm actually going to be talking about, I read in my Fiance Chooses reading vlog, where Luke ended up picking out all the books that I read. I uploaded that recently in the month of October, so if you want to check that out before I give away what books he picked for me and all my thoughts on them, go ahead and watch that first and come back to this video. But the first book that he ended up choosing for me was Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. Let me just say, the second he picked out a Brandon Sanderson book, even though I've been talking about him so much because his friends have been reading a lot of Brandon Sanderson recently, so I kind of wanted to jump on the Brandon Sanderson train soon. So I was talking about it a lot, and I was like, I want to read a Brandon Sanderson book so bad. He was like, I want to pick a Brandon Sanderson book. Let me tell you, in the bookstore, I was shaking in my boots. I was so incredibly nervous to give this a go because Brandon Sanderson is such a well-known, well-renowned fantasy sci-fi author, and this was a sci-fi book by him, and this is a YA series as well. So I don't know if it's just because it was YA or what, but this was surprisingly so bingeable, and I enjoyed this so much. In this book, we're following our main character, Spensa, and she lives in a world where they have literally been at war since before she was born. And in this world, the pilots are like the heroes. They are so well decorated and well renowned, and they risk their lives every single day. And she really wants to be a pilot, but for one reason or another, because of her family and their current reputation and standings within this world that they live in, it's kind of hard for her to get respect and to be seen as somebody who could be a pilot. Scarlet. She's such an interesting main character too. She's so quirky and fun and a little bit different, and I just really, really enjoyed reading about her and her adventures. I also haven't read tons of sci-fi, so it was fun to kind of like dip my toes in the water of that too. Again, like I already said about his writing, incredibly bingeable, surprisingly enough. I think there were a few parts that were a little bit slower, but I feel like that makes sense for it being the first book in a sci-fi series. You kind of have to learn all the characters and stuff like that, get introduced to so many different things, and this actually also holds place when she's going to flight school, which is so interesting. And it's kind of got that Harry Potter fourth wing feel of going to school and stuff like that. So if you love whenever they're like in school and they're younger and they're learning how to do things, I think you would definitely eat this up and love this. If you're scared of sci-fi, if you're scared of Brandon Sanderson, literally don't be. I am so excited to continue this series. It was so incredibly good. And it definitely is a YA book. There are a few things that are very YA, but honestly, it wasn't too much. I just looked over it and I still really enjoyed it. And let me just say, he is not afraid to get rid of a character. Okay, so that is your warning going into this one. There definitely were some tears shed, okay, in that ending. This book was so good. I cannot talk about it enough. I'm so excited to read the rest of the series and eventually get into the Cosmere, which is like how all of his adult sci-fi and fantasy books connect and stuff like that. I don't know too much about it right now. If you've got any advice for me going into Brandon Sanderson and his crazy complex magic systems and worlds, leave them down below, please. But yeah, I think I'm gonna rate this like a 4.25. I don't know why I keep giving like 2 to 3 different ratings or like what they're in between. I just cannot rate books right now, but I did really enjoy it and I definitely highly recommend. Okay, now getting to the books that I read in the month of October, and I actually do also have the statistics for this one as well, so little pat on my back there. I ended up reading 7 books in the month of October: 1 literary fiction, 1 fantasy, 1 novella, 1 classic, and 3 romances. And in total, I read 2,255 pages. I will say the novella was audio only, so I have no idea how many pages it was. I did read a little bit more pages though than that page number because I did read that novella. And then I will also have my average rating for the month up on the screen. Okay, next up is the second book that I read in the Fiance Chooses video. Let me just say, whenever he chose this, I was definitely not thrilled. Not thrilled is the perfect way to say how I felt about this book, to be completely honest. He wanted me to read a classic, and he ended up choosing The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. Oh, Nathaniel Hawthorne and I definitely have some beef. We have some very big beef, okay? The whole idea and the whole premise of this book is very outdated, and I understand why it is a classic, just how The Great Gatsby was a classic. It has a lot of symbolism, a lot of talks about different themes and stuff like that that can definitely be looked into further, and it's definitely written for the time that it was in. Let me just say that, because this would not happen today, and if it did, I'm literally running away to live anywhere else. Basically, this book is in a very Puritan society. It's back in the day. I don't even know when it is. It is mid-17th century, and we are following our main character, Hester Prynne. And basically, this woman was put on trial because she ended up having a baby out of wedlock. So she wasn't married. They don't know who the guy is or anything like that. They can't find the guy. And there's a lot of gossip and things going around. They're just like, just get rid of her. Like, get rid of her. That's crazy to me, but whatever. Different time, Katie. Crazy time, might I just say. But very different time as well. And this is just a book. You know, it's fine. Anyway, she ends up having a baby out of wedlock, and because of that, they put a scarlet letter on her chest, and she has to stand in the town center with the scarlet letter on her chest and with the shame of the scarlet letter being there, and she has to stand there for like hours. I'll be honest, this was very hard to follow, so I don't know if it was hours a day, hours a month, or whatever, but she had to stand out there, okay, and like show off the scarlet letter and her child in front of everybody, which was basically a way to show and give shame upon her, which is obviously so incredibly wild, you know, that this would happen at all. And let me just say, this book started out with like a 50-page intro that was so redundant and was literally just about the guy who wanted to write the story about the Scarlet Letter. Tell me why I need to know that. And like so many about these things were so redundant as well, and we went on so many different random tangents that didn't really make sense to the story. There were some things that I was like, ooh, intrigued, like want to know more. Whenever like people were like gossiping about her and all of that kind of stuff, or any interesting bits about like Hester Prynne in general, and then like as her child grew up and all that kind of stuff, like I thought that was interesting about like the society they live in and like the church and like the way that like sin and God is used. It was very interesting to read about that, obviously, because it's very different to today. There was a lot of shame and judgment and all of that kind of stuff as well, but oh my gosh, everything I want to know more about literally didn't get talked about more, unfortunately. And the way it was written was so hard to follow as well. I ended up listening to the majority of this, and literal headache is the only word I have for it. I did not enjoy this book. I understand why it was written and why it's a classic for its time, obviously, and I think I ended up rating it like a 2-star, but I honestly, do I rate it a 1? Oh my god, is that awful of me? I've never rated a book book a 1 star, but it's definitely in between a 1 and a 2. I'll tell you that. Bottom line is, I didn't enjoy it. I don't recommend it. Maybe later in life, like Luke was saying, I will look back at this and reread it and think better upon it and actually enjoy it in some way, shape, or form. I personally don't see that happening, but you know, who's to say? And then the last book that I read in the Fiancé Chooses video was The Ministry of Time by Kellyanne Bradley. And this is a literary fiction with a big subplot of romance. In this, we're basically following our main character, and she is actually nameless, which is quite interesting. I feel like a lot of the books that I read, you obviously know the name of the main character. And it's set in London, and our main character is basically a part of this time travel program where they're taking people from the past who ended up dying, and they're taking them before they die and putting them into like present day, like now. Which honestly, pretty interesting concept. At first I was like, okay, sign me up. Like I'd heard so many great things about this book and I was so intrigued and interested and ready to go, especially after reading the Scarlet Letter. And I really loved the first half. I feel like even though it was more character based and a little bit slow and there wasn't really a lot of plot going on, I thought it was interesting. I really enjoyed it, liked the characters, loved the subplot of romance. But then we got to the second half. And let me just say, this book got messy, but messy in a different way. Messy in a way that was kind of like, why? What? How? Huh? You know? Obviously not gonna give anything away, but like literally what happened? And one thing about me is that I'm gonna be honest, and that if I do not like a book, you guys will know. I'm not gonna sugarcoat this at all. I honestly ended up rating this like a 3. I think it's more of like a 2.5 in all honesty. The ending was just so messy and all over the place, and there was kind of like a mystery element that I was really intrigued about and really excited to know more about, and it just didn't make sense, and so many things that were plot devices just came so quickly, and it was too easy, and I don't know. I was really disappointed because I love a time travel moment, and I really want to read more time travel books that I actually enjoy. So leave me some recs down below if you got any time travel books that are really good. But I just feel like this book started off so interesting and so well with such a great concept that the ending was just kind of rushed and fell super flat for me, unfortunately. But I do feel like this concept and just everything about it had so much potential. I just didn't enjoy it as much. I think it's like a 2.5. And obviously books are subjective, blah, 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 blah. The same disclaimer I give you guys all the time whenever I don't really like a book that much. Remember, you are allowed to love a book I hate and vice versa, okay? So please don't hate me for not liking this book if you love it. Still love you. Still love you even though we have different taste. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move on from that video. The next book that I ended up reading was Hopeless by Elsie Silver. This was my before bed book. I actually started this in September, and this is the 5th and final book in the Chestnut Spring series. This is following Bo Eaton and our main girl character, Bailey Jansen. It's also dual POV. All you really need to know about the plot of this one is that it is an engagement of convenience, basically fake engagement moment, fake dating. And it's also like a 10-ish year age gap moment, I believe. 13-year age gap, actually. And I normally love a fake dating moment. I love these books in general. Love Elsie Silver's writing. Still enjoyed the writing. Love the town. Love everything about it. But this one honestly fell pretty flat for me. I think this is my least favorite out of the entire series. Now, there were still some things that I did enjoy about it. You know, I liked Bailey and Bo. I liked their connection and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I think that the spice of it all kind of overcame the plot. And personally, my reading taste at the moment, it does change quite a bit, I will be honest. But at the moment, I am a lot more of a tension over spice girly. I do enjoy a little bit of spice, don't get me wrong, but I like it whenever it fits in with the plot. And here, it was just so redundant and it was just overdone. I feel like this book was honestly like a little bit too long too. Not a lot really happened. It was just kind of character based and following around the characters. And again, didn't really love the characters, so didn't really love this book. I think it's honestly like a 3.5, which isn't a bad rating. Obviously, like there are still things that I enjoyed about it. Just comparing it to the rest of the Chestnut Spring series, it was a little bit disappointing. I think my rating as of right now goes Reckless, number 1. Obviously, that's a 5-star for me. You guys know I never stop talking about Theo Silva. I love him to death. And Winter, I literally don't think I've ever related to a female main character like I relate to Winter Hamilton. I love her so much. Actually, looking at these books over here, I have this rating down. Okay, so it's Reckless number 1, then Heartless, Flawless, Powerless, and then Hopeless being the last one. And I still definitely recommend the series and recommend finishing it out. And it was always fun to see like my other characters in the town from the other books and stuff in this book as well. And then like all together as a family, I ate those parts up. And then the next book that I ended up reading was The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Lori Gilmer. It's part of the Dream Harbor series, which are like interconnected standalones in this cute little small town. The cover is just so fall. I've been saying this everywhere on social media, so I had to read it. And in this one, it is dual POV. We're following our main characters, Jeannie and Logan. And Jeannie just just recently moved to the town of Dream Harbor, and she took on her aunt's cafe, which is the pumpkin spice cafe in town. So she's new to the town, new to the area, and also the new owner of the cafe. And Logan is actually a townie, a local. He's grown up there his entire life, and he works on the farm. His family owns the farm as well. This book was like everything that you want in a Hallmark movie. It was cheesy, it was fun, it was cute, a little bit spicy as well. And it was like the best of the best Hallmark. You know how Hallmark movies are sometimes like a little much, a little bit repetitive, all the same, just kind of like, nah, like you've seen one, you've seen them all. This one, if this was on the Hallmark Channel, this would be like literally their top movie ever. And I'm really excited to read the rest of the books in the series too. I think there's 3 out right now. I don't know if there's going to be any more. There's like a Christmas one, and then I don't know what the second one is, but I know the third one is like Christmassy themed, and I'm very excited to read them and read about the bookshop owner specifically. The small town vibes were totally there. I feel like this is just a solid 4-star romance for me. It was very cute, very fun, and did everything I needed it to do. Will I be thinking about these characters forever? No, but did I enjoy it for what it was, and what is a good fun time? Yes. So I highly recommend if you're looking for a cute small town romance with like more of like an atmospheric fall vibe. I think the only thing about it that I didn't particularly like love was the little bit of redundant spice that was kind of at the end. And I feel like it was like a little bit long. Like once we got together, I was kind of like, why are we still reading? But other than that, I enjoyed it. It did what it needed to do, and I definitely recommend. Okay, and then after that, I ended up reading The Prison Healer by Lynette Noni. And like I was talking about with Spark of the Everflame, our main character is also a healer in this one. Her name is Kiva, and she's been in this prison for about 10 years or so, and her job in the prison is to heal the inmates and the guards of the prison. Now, the plot of this book is basically there is a rebel queen that ends up coming to the prison, and she ends up getting put up for these trials, but she's like deathly ill, like she can't do it. And for one reason or another, Miss Kiva ends up volunteering to do the trials in her place. And let me just say, these trials are literally like impossible. That's the best way to describe them. If you do not have help, you will literally not survive. And that's the way it's supposed to be, because they obviously don't want you to live, because if you live through all of the trials, you get to go free and you are not a prisoner anymore. So they try to make it as impossible as possible to complete the trials. I feel like I've heard so many things about this book over the years. I feel like this is kind of a book that's been around for quite a while now. And I feel like a lot of people say this isn't their favorite. They're kind of like disappointed by it. I ate this up. This was so good, especially for a first book in a fantasy series. The way she tells a story is so interesting, to where like you're figuring out information as other characters do and stuff like that. Like she's telling it in such a good way that I love it. Like it's not just like info dumping. You're getting the information you need as you need it and figuring things out as you go, which is just so genius. And the characters in here I instantly felt connected to for one reason or another. I don't really know what it was. I just felt it, and I adore these characters, and I cannot believe the twists and turns. There were quite a few plot twists in here actually that were very interesting, and I was not expecting. I think that beforehand, because my book club actually ended up reading this, but we were all talking about all of these theories that we had and stuff, and now that I've read it, like honestly, a lot of the times whenever I make up theories and stuff, I get disappointed by like my theories not being right or whatever. But oh my gosh, this lived up to my expectations. I thought this was so good. I think I'm gonna rate it like a 4.25, maybe a 4.5. I'm feeling crazy. I just feel like I still need some time to think about it. And if I didn't have other books I need to read or other videos I need to film for, I literally would have picked up the second one immediately from that ending. It was so good. It was so interesting. I really just wanted to keep reading. This first one is actually on Kindle Unlimited as well. So if you want to read it on Kindle Unlimited, you're not sure if you're gonna like it or not just because of the mixed reviews, give it a try on there and then go from there. I guarantee you will enjoy it. Like I said with Spark of the Everflame too, not having anything really spoiled for me with this series was so nice. So I'm so excited to get into tons of other fantasy series that are not like as world renowned and crazy popular and as talked about on social media, because this was really good. There were some times where her thoughts just kind of like kept like going on, and I understand that like obviously they're trying to convey that she's like overthinking and going through a lot, because she is. Kiva was so brave and determined, but she obviously still had a lot that she was going through. But at the same time, there was just a little bit too much repetition for me, and there were some parts where it just was a little bit slow. But again, I love the character, so I ate up every minute, and I thought this was really good. Okay, and then we have the novella that I ended up reading, which was Allie Hazelwood's novella that was like in partnership with Spotify. It was called Two Can Play, and is actually only available as an audiobook. And I've read everything that Miss Allie Hazelwood has ever come out with, all of her other novellas, all of her other books. So I figured, why not continue the streak? I'm gonna read this one. And this was fun, interesting, nice little palate cleanser cleansing little novella romance moment. I honestly think I need to stop reading novellas, to be completely honest, because I don't really get a lot out of them. But at the same time, I do enjoy them to a certain extent. I don't even rate novellas most of the time because it just doesn't really seem fair. And a lot of times I just want to know more about the characters. I want like more of their story and more of their development. And sometimes things just happen like too fast. So it doesn't really feel fair to rate them. In this one, we're basically following our main character, Viola, and she works for this like video game company. She's like a video game designer, and they are trying to work on this new video game for one of her favorite book series growing up, which is the Limerence series. And basically they have to end up possibly working on this project with their like competing rival company. There's a lot of drama and a lot of tiffs and stuff like that with the people within these two companies. And they end up going on this like work retreat to try and like bond and break the ice a little bit and see if they can end up working together. And this is a romance novella, so her and a guy from the other company have a little bit of a past, which is kind of interesting. And honestly, this was pretty cute for a novella. I really do love Ellie Hazelwood's writing, to be completely honest. Like, it just like speaks to me in a way, I guess. I don't know, I eat it up every time. Like, she is a grocery list author for me. I literally could read her grocery list and I'd be eating it up all over it. So I don't know, for a novella, this is cute and fun. If you could pick a novella to listen to, I would pick this one, to be completely honest. It was cute, fun, like I already said, and I thought the story was interesting. Honestly, would have loved for it to be longer, would have loved for it to be a full book. And I thought the concept was cool too. So I really enjoyed this. I recommend, if you're going to read a novella, read this one. The final book that I ended up reading in the month of October was Nothing Like the Movies by Lynn Painter. This book has been so heavily anticipated for me. This is the sequel to Better Than the Movies, which you guys, I've already talked about in this video, so you already know that I love it. 5-star read for me. Just ate it up. If you're looking for anything that feels like the first time you fall in love, or you want any type of nostalgic feeling, you will love that and you will eat that book up. So this being the second one, especially because it's romance, I was like, why is it a second chance? Like, Lynn Painter, what are we doing? And we're again following our main character's Les and Wiz. It actually is dual POV this time, which is what I wanted in the first one because I absolutely loved Wes. So I'm really glad that we got his POV in this one. And they're actually in college in this one. It's set at UCLA. And I really like the atmosphere of them being in college and them being a little bit more grown up. I feel like I could relate to it a little bit more since I am 23 and I'm not like 18, 17 anymore, even though I still do obviously eat up like a high school YA romance. I will say, I wish I could have reread Better Than the Movies before I got into this one because it wasn't like very fresh in my head. I think it's been, oh my gosh, has it been 2 years actually? Like 2.5 years, I think. And also when I said I reread Daisy Jones and the Six a year and a half ago, I think that was 2.5 years ago actually. Actually, wait, just kidding. I have no idea, but it's been a while. I don't know. I have my years completely mixed up. Anyways, it's set at college. They're broken up. It's a second chance romance. They end up seeing each other again for one reason or another. I don't really give anything away, but I feel like the big thing about this book was that it was a lot different than Better Than the Movies. I feel like a lot of people didn't enjoy that. I personally did. I think I understood what she was trying to do here. That one is called Better Than the Movies, is very lovey-dovey, rom-commy, and fun. And this one was a little bit more raw and real. It talked a lot about grief and a lot about losing someone and a lot about hurt and a lot about real emotions that a lot of people go through at this college age. And it was very nostalgic as well to read as someone who has gone through these thoughts and feelings as well. And the characters did grow up and they did change a little bit because they have been through things. And for me, that made so much sense because you change so incredibly much just within your first few months of college, especially whenever you have such big life changes that are happening to you like these two characters did in this book. I think what Lynn Painter was trying to say with this book, though, is that it didn't need to be like the movies for them to have a love story that really meant something and that was very real and raw and authentic and genuine, which I think is very sweet and very intuitive, honestly, because I think a lot of people read books and watch movies and stuff like that and think that everything about other relationships are perfect and no real relationship is perfect at all. And you're not always going to have those movie moments in a relationship. There are so many phases you go through in every single relationship you have, especially a romantic one. When I was reading this book, I was absolutely eating it up. Okay, I was getting 5-star feelings. I was loving it. I thought it was so awesome to see them in college and see them growing up from these characters that I knew and loved from a past book that I just absolutely adore. So I was like, okay, easy 5-star. Let's go. We got to like the last 50 pages and unfortunately it was not a 5-star, which I'm so disappointed about. I just need a 5-star. Leave me 5-star recommendations down below, please. The way it wrapped up just didn't really do it for me, unfortunately. It felt kind of like rushed and it also felt a little bit too miscommunication toward the end, but there were so many other things that I enjoyed about this book. And I honestly think the romance kind of took like a little bit of a back seat in this one, even though it was still at the forefront for most of it, because we did just follow the two characters' main individual stories a lot of the time, but they still did interact quite a bit, and I thought it was really good. In my opinion, I just didn't really like the ending. And I don't know, I'm having a lot of trouble rating this one, unfortunately. I think it's like a 4, 3.75, 4.25. I have no idea. I just finished this like last night, literally, and I have no idea what I want to rate it because I'm like so conflicted with it. But yeah, I don't know. I'm glad I read it. I recommend it. I don't know if it was completely necessary, but I did enjoy the story. Okay, that is it for my September and my October wrap up. Let me know if you guys have read these books, if you guys have any thoughts on them. And if you did enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you've watched until this far in the video, go ahead and comment down below a flower emoji, your favorite one, or your favorite book that you read this past month, so I know who the real ones are who watched until the very end. And if you want to keep up with me on the daily, don't forget to follow my Instagram, my TikTok, and my Goodreads. Goodreads especially if you want to keep up with what I'm reading in real time. Those are always linked down below. And yeah, I hope you guys all had a great reading month. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys. Talk about books. Period. Things and blah, 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 blah. 2 were literally fiction. Literally fiction. So I wanted to kind of like jump on the brand and I also have the statistics. I can't say Miss Allywood. Allywood? No. Period. Let me double check I didn't forget anything.